nights of hell. I never thought I'd end up working the graveyard shift at a place like this. Willowridge Mall had been shuttered for nearly 15 years, a hollow skeleton of its former self sitting on the edge of a forgotten stretch in eastern Colorado. Most folks around Greenhollow claimed it was cursed. Whispers of failed businesses, strange disappearances, and entire wings that sealed themselves off over time. But the town council wanted to restore it, said the location still had potential, said it just needed a little cleanup. So they hired us, security. I didn't even want the job. I was between gigs, low on rent, and tired of couch surfing. When the offer came in with triple pay for overnights, I didn't ask questions. I signed the waiver and took the keys. My first night was July 1st. I showed up just before midnight. The sun had dipped below the mountains, leaving nothing but a bruised sky and the crunch of gravel beneath my boots as I pulled up in my rusting sedan. The mall was massive, 3 floors, over 100 shops, an abandoned movie theater, and a food court that still smelled faintly like fried grease and sugar. But everything was dark, the kind of dark that pressed in on your skin. My radio crackled as I stepped through the front entrance. A voice came through, low and distant. "Welcome, officer. Trent, begin your rounds. Log everything. Don't leave your post." It was Alan, the supervisor who'd trained me the day before. He didn't mention that he'd be monitoring me, but I figured it was protocol. The job sounded simple: patrol the mall, make notes in the logbook, and report anything strange. But no one told me what strange really meant. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was inside. Not just mall quiet. No whir of vents, no buzzing lights. Just a silence so thick it felt like noise. I tried flipping on some of the overheads, but only half the mall responded. The rest flickered or stayed dead. My flashlight became my best friend. I walked past shuttered storefronts, Echo Electronics, Ruby and Stitch, a bookstore that had long since collapsed into its own dusty shelves. Everything looked frozen. Like the day the mall closed, it had simply locked time inside with it. Still, nothing seemed too out of the ordinary until I reached the West Wing escalators. They were moving, both up and down, humming softly. The problem? They weren't connected to power. That entire wing was sealed off for electrical repairs. I double-checked my tablet. It showed no active circuits in that area. I stood there, just watching them for a moment, until I heard the sound. Footsteps. Above me. Rhythmic. Deliberate. One step at a time. Then silence. I called up over the rail. "Hello? This is security. You're not supposed to be here." Nothing. Just that endless hum. Against my better judgment, I climbed the escalator. Each step creaked under my weight. At the top, I scanned the hallway. Just more closed stores and dusty skylights. I swept my beam left and right. Nothing. Until the monitors in the security office flickered to life. I rushed back to the office on the second floor, the only area that felt remotely safe. The door clicked shut behind me, and I locked it instinctively. The monitors, 12 grainy black and white feeds, showed different parts of the mall. Most were dark, static-ridden, or stuck on old frames. But one screen caught my attention. Feed 9. The arcade. The machines were on. All of them. Bright neon flashed silently across the screen. Games I didn't even recognize. The camera angle was strange, like it had been tilted, showing more of the ceiling than the floor. But in the reflection of the arcade's mirrored wall, I saw a figure, standing, still, watching. I stared at it, trying to make out details, but the quality was too poor. I toggled the controls, switching cameras. Feed 6, food court. Feed 7, east wing. Feed 9 again. Gone. The arcade was dark, no lights, no reflection, no figure. I let out a slow breath and sat down at the desk, trying to ground myself. Maybe it was an old tape on a loop. Maybe some of the wiring was still live. I opened the logbook to make a note and saw something I didn't write. Trent, don't look in the mirrors. I didn't write that. The pen was still in the drawer, and the ink was fresh. I decided to cut my rounds short. Something about the place had shifted, like the air itself was watching me. I wanted to believe it was just the stress or the eerie quiet, or maybe a prank left behind by some bored maintenance guy. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that. I passed the central atrium, a massive open space where fake trees still stood beneath a cracked glass dome. I tried not to look at the broken fountains or the benches covered in dust. I focused on the exit sign ahead, glowing red like a promise. But when I reached the doors, they wouldn't open. Not stuck, not jammed, just wrong. Like the hinges didn't exist anymore. I pressed my hands against the glass. Nothing. I even hit the emergency override. Still nothing. The exit wasn't there. It looked like it was, but it wasn't real. That's when I heard the voice again. You logged in. That means you're staying. It wasn't from the radio this time. It was behind me. I turned fast, shining my light, but all I saw were mannequins. Dozens of them, positioned outside the shuttered clothing store, arms raised in mid-pose. But I hadn't seen them before, and I was sure they hadn't been facing me. I backed away slowly, heart hammering. In the glass of the display window, I caught my reflection, except it didn't move with me. It smiled, and the lights went out. I got maybe 3 hours of sleep before the sun went down. Even during the day, my apartment felt wrong, too still, like the quiet was waiting for me to notice it. The corners of my room looked darker than usual. My plants hadn't moved toward the light. Even the refrigerator hummed with a weird off-tempo buzz, like something was mimicking the sound and getting it just slightly wrong. But I went back. I don't even remember getting dressed. 1 minute I was lying on the couch, trying to convince myself not to go. The next, I was pulling into the same crumbling parking lot of Willowridge Mall, headlights catching on broken signage and boarded-up windows. Same cold breeze greeted me the second I stepped out of my car. Same click of the lock behind the security entrance door. I don't know why I'm still doing this. Maybe it's curiosity. Maybe I'm in too deep already. The minute I stepped inside, it felt like the air shifted. Not in a natural way, more like walking into a dream halfway through. The smells were back. Stale popcorn, burnt sugar, that faint tang of something metallic, like old coins soaked in humidity. The monitors in the office blinked as I walked past them. Not flickered, blinked like eyes. I glanced back, and all screens had gone black for a second before returning to normal, each one humming faintly. I signed in anyway. My handwriting didn't look like my own. 9:02 p.m. Patrol start. I decided to walk the West Wing first, past the old cinema and the skeletal husk of what used to be a bookstore. The lights in that section were weaker than before, like the shadows had thickened somehow. As I passed the theatre, the poster frames were filled again. But not with ads, just photos of me. Different angles, different outfits. Some I didn't recognize. One showed me standing in the food court with my back turned to the camera. Another was of me looking into a mirror I've never seen before. The timestamps were all marked. August 3rd, 2023. Tomorrow. I backed away, feeling the chill crawl up my spine like a slow spreading frost. My radio crackled. Don't look behind you. A whisper. A breath more than a voice. I froze, but of course, I looked. Nothing. Except the escalators. They were on, moving. They hadn't worked in years. But now, the treads hissed up and down, carrying nothing. I took one cautious step forward, drawn to the motion, until I realized what was wrong. The top wasn't connected to the second floor. The escalator went up, into blackness, like it led into a space the building didn't have. And above it, I swear, I saw it. Just for a second, a face, pressed against the void, watching. I turned and walked. Fast. I didn't run, because something told me it would notice that. I passed the fountain, where water hadn't flowed since the early 2000s. But tonight, it gurgled softly. The surface shimmered, but not with light. More like it was showing a different version of the mall. One where the lights still worked, where families walked past stores, where someone who looked like me, stood at the center and smiled. The reflection winked at me. I kept walking. 10:45 p.m., East Hall observation. The eastern wing used to be where the higher-end stores were. Now it's just silence and busted neon. Or it was. Tonight, the scent of perfume hung in the air. Soft music played from a store that didn't have electricity. It was an old tune, something orchestral but wrong in the pitch, like it was warped with age. I stepped into the old Belmore's department store. Dust still covered most of the display cases, but the mannequins had been moved. They weren't where they'd been the night before. They were all standing at the glass doors, facing outward, not just looking outside, looking for something or someone. I turned to leave, but my shoes scuffed against something hard. I looked down, a name tag, one that looked exactly like mine, except it wasn't just a name. It said, Colin Rourke, night tenant. I didn't pick it up. I didn't move. Then the mannequins twitched. Not much, just enough to make sure I saw it. That was enough for me. 11:59 p.m. Returned to security office. When I got back, the monitors were all on again, but none of them showed the mall. They were all showing me in real time, except one. One showed my bedroom, empty, lights on, the sheets still pulled back, as if I'd just left. I reached to shut the screen off, and the second my hand touched the dial, all of them blinked off at once. Then the radio buzzed again. Same voice, same distortion. Second night, still watching, I yanked the cord out of the wall. Didn't matter. The voice kept going from nowhere this time. Don't leave. I wanted to scream. I didn't. I sat down. I wrote this log. I checked my phone. The time hadn't changed since 9:02. The battery was dead, even though it was full when I got here. I'm starting to wonder if time moves differently in this place, or if I'm still outside at all, or if I ever left. I'm not going back for a third night, but something tells me that's not my choice anymore. I jolted awake, lungs burning like I'd been holding my breath for hours. My sheets clung to my skin, damp with sweat. The room felt off, airless, like the walls had closed in while I slept. I blinked against the darkness, trying to anchor myself to something real. Just a dream. That's what I told myself. But the glowing red digits on my nightstand told a different story. 4:02 a.m., the same time I climbed into bed, the same time the mall tried to keep me. I reached for my phone, desperate for a sense of connection. No new texts, no missed calls. I opened my contacts to call Alan, my supervisor, maybe even Carly, the girl who trained me. But there were no names, no numbers, just a blank white screen, as if no one had ever existed. A low hum crept in from the corner of the room. The old radio? I didn't remember turning it on. I twisted the dial, hoping for news or a song, anything normal, but every frequency hissed with static, layered with garbled whispers that felt far too intentional. I glanced outside, half expecting to see the glowing signs of Montvale, Colorado, streetlights, cars gliding by, porch lamps flickering. But the town looked frozen. No breeze, no movement, just houses stuck in place, like a photograph left in the sun too long. Then my phone buzzed violently on the nightstand. Unknown number, night 3. You need to see. My stomach coiled. My fingers, cold and rigid, curled around something I hadn't noticed before. Something I didn't remember picking up. A logbook. The security log from the Willowridge Mall. It was open. My handwriting stared back at me. We never left. I stumbled away from the window, the weight of those 3 words pressing on my chest like a hand trying to hold me down. I tried to shake it off, to cling to the idea that this was still a dream, an elaborate trick of the mind. I threw on my jacket, stuffed my phone into the pocket, and snatched my keys from the dresser. I needed to move. I needed air. Something to break the loop. I opened the front door. The night greeted me with an eerie stillness. The breeze was too cold, the silence too perfect. No rustling leaves, no barking dogs, no distant highway hum. I took a step forward, and then I blinked. The world flipped. Suddenly, I wasn't in my neighborhood. I wasn't outside my apartment on Elm Street anymore. I was standing in the security booth at Willowridge Mall. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting their familiar sickly glow. The monitors in front of me blinked awake. The logbook lay open beside me, pages fluttering slightly, though there was no breeze. I never drove here. I never unlocked the doors. I never agreed to come back. Then the PA system crackled to life. At first, just static. Then, my voice. Flat. Calm. Way too calm. Night 3 begins now. I froze. That wasn't a recording. That wasn't from a previous shift. That was me. From now. I walked the halls slowly, every footstep bouncing too loudly off the tiled floor. The mall had shifted. Not just in layout, something deeper, more personal, like it was syncing with my thoughts. I passed a clothing store, Blue Pines Outfitters. It looked open, fully stocked. Employees folding shirts, shoppers browsing. The overhead lights hummed softly, steady and inviting. But then I saw them, the mannequins, dozens of them, all turned toward me, every one of them. I stopped cold. Their faces were blank, but their stances unnatural, as if they'd been caught mid-turn. Their plastic hands stretched ever so slightly toward me. I backed away, refusing to blink. Then, a child's laughter rang out behind me. I spun, catching a flash of movement. Someone running. A boy, maybe 7 or 8, dressed in clothes no kid today would wear. A faded plaid shirt, patched suspenders, and leather-soled shoes that scuffed the tiles as he vanished around the corner. I ran after him, turning the corner. Nothing. Just the echo of laughter. My heart pounded. I looked to my left, catching a glimpse of myself in a darkened storefront. Except, it wasn't just a reflection. It didn't move with me. I stepped forward. It didn't. I lifted my hand. It just stared back. Then I blinked, and it smiled. I turned and ran, not thinking, just moving. Down unfamiliar halls that weren't there yesterday. Past stores that didn't exist last week. Towards something I couldn't name, but knew I had to reach. The food court. It had changed. The signage above the restaurants was twisted, flickering between languages I didn't recognize. The scent of fresh food wafted through the air. Burgers, cinnamon, fried dough, but not a single person was seated. The chairs were pulled out, trays left behind like everyone had just left. But nothing moved, nothing breathed, except me, and something else. The speakers above me hissed, then cleared. A voice spoke. It said my name, not in a shout, not in warning. A whisper, a summons. I turned and ran for the security office, slamming the door behind me. The overhead light flickered as I tore through the drawers. Old files, maintenance schedules, incident reports. Then I found them. Yellowed newspaper clippings, brittle with age. Construction halted after crew disappears. Local tribes protest disruption of sacred land. Willowridge grand opening set for July 4th, 1982. Something twisted inside me. The mall wasn't just built on land, it was buried in it. Whatever had been here before, it had never left. And now, it was awake. I opened the logbook one more time. My handwriting again. Night 3. You are part of it now. The speakers behind me clicked. Laughter followed. I was done. I didn't care what this place wanted. I didn't care about messages or rituals or loops. I threw the logbook into a drawer, grabbed my jacket, and headed for the exit. My boots clacked too loud against the tile. The air buzzed with invisible static. Don't look at the stores. Don't look at the mirrors. Don't think. I reached the end of the corridor, where the glass doors to the parking lot should have been. Gone. Not boarded up, not broken, gone. Bricked over, seamless, as if they'd never existed. I spun around, desperate to find another exit. An emergency door, a fire escape, anything. Every turn led me back to the security office. Every hallway, every sign. Back to the office. The monitors flickered again. I saw myself. The food court, the mannequins, the boy in suspenders. Then, on the screen, another me, watching me. The PA crackled again. This time, the voice was right behind me. "We never leave." I turned. Nothing. Just empty air. I stumbled forward, heart pounding, until I caught a glimpse of something in a storefront window. A reflection. Mine. But it didn't move. Didn't mirror me. Just stood there, watching. Then it grinned. A slow, crooked smile, and stepped forward. Out of the glass. I fell backward, and more figures appeared in the reflection. Row after row of them. My face on all of them. Blank. Staring. Waiting. The PA system buzzed one last time. "Night 3 is complete. Welcome home." I'm not sure what's real anymore. I went home last night. Or I think I did. Everything felt wrong when I stepped into my apartment. The light flickered like the world was stuttering. My bed was cold, untouched. The sheets still perfectly folded, even though I knew I'd been there. And my phone? It was gone. Completely gone. Not just off, missing. Like it had been plucked out of my hands in the middle of the night. So, I went back to the mall. I wasn't going to go. I told myself I wouldn't. But the pull is different now. It's like it has something of mine. Something that won't let me leave. Like the mall is hungry, and I'm the meal. By the time I parked my car, the entire place looked different. Not physically, not in a way anyone would notice, but different in my bones. The air felt heavy, like it was thicker somehow, pushing against me. The lights buzzed low, flickering, even though no one was supposed to be here. The security office was waiting for me, just like always. The monitors, the desk, my name on the sign-in sheet. I took a deep breath and sat down. I knew I wasn't alone. The radio crackled to life before I even touched it. "Colin," the voice whispered, soft, strained. "You're still here." I gripped the radio, pressing it to my ear, but it wasn't coming from the device. It was coming from the walls. The air itself seemed to hum with the voice. Something in my chest squeezed. "You should never have come back." I didn't know what to do. I couldn't leave, and yet I couldn't stay either. I went for a walk again, down the east wing. My steps echoed too loudly. Every shadow seemed to follow me. Every corner seemed to bend in on itself. The first thing I noticed was the smell. It wasn't like before. The old popcorn, the sweet cinnamon, the dust, it was still there, but something else had been added. Something chemical, sharp, like acid. And then the mannequins, the ones from last night. They were back. They were moved. They weren't by the windows anymore. They were standing in front of the store's old candy aisle. All of them, still. Silent. Eyes locked on me. Except one. The one in the middle. It wasn't wearing the same clothes as the others. It wore the exact uniform I'd been wearing for the past 3 nights. My own uniform. I stepped closer. I couldn't stop myself. The mannequin smiled. It didn't just grin like some empty-eyed thing. It smiled like it knew something, like it was mocking me. I took a step back, heart pounding in my ears. The mall was changing again. It wasn't just eerie. Things were different, in ways I couldn't explain. The food court, for example. When I walked by, the tables weren't empty. People were sitting there, talking, laughing. Their faces blurred like I couldn't focus on them. But they were real enough to laugh. The smell of food was so strong, I could taste it. Burgers, fries, hot dogs, just the scent of it, even though the food court had been abandoned for years. I couldn't breathe. I had to get out. But the hallways, they stretched. The distance between each door, each hallway, Each exit, it all felt wrong. They were too far, too close, like the space between them was folding in on itself. I walked for what felt like an hour, but when I looked at the clock on the wall, only 15 minutes had passed. And then I saw something that made my stomach flip. The escalator. It wasn't moving this time. It was just there. At the top, I thought I saw something. Someone. But not really a person. It was too tall, too thin, like it was stretched out of shape. It wasn't the building's fault. It wasn't my fault. It was me. I'd become a part of this place. I'd been pulled into its history, into its ghostly architecture. The air was so thick now, I could barely breathe, barely see. I took one last look around. The mannequins were gone. The store with the food had disappeared. The lights flickered out, leaving the hallways in total darkness. Except for the whispers. The whispers were still there. You never left. I forced myself to move, ignoring the nausea in my stomach. I didn't know how much more I could take. I was about to call it in, but then I noticed something. The security log. I don't remember touching it, but there it was. Open to a new entry. It wasn't in my handwriting. Night 4. The walls are watching. My hands shook. My pulse quickened. I looked around. I couldn't even tell which direction I was facing anymore. The voice on the PA system crackled again. Clear this time. Almost too clear. You can't leave. You never could. I wasn't in control anymore. And I realized it then. The mall wasn't a place I was working in. It was a place I was being kept.